Hey everyone, it's Eddie Kalegi reminding you that each and every episode of Sports Speak is powered by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a one-stop shop for tickets to concerts, sporting events, and so much more. And now you can use the promo code SportsSpeak on the site to get $20 off your first purchase. So what are you waiting for? SeatGeek. Let there be live. And now on to the show. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sports Speak Live, powered by SeatGeek, episode 173. Use promo code SportsSpeak, all caps, one word, $20 off your first purchase at checkout. It's the summer, so that means baseball games, concerts, a lot going on. Be sure to take advantage of that offer from us, thanks to our partners at SeatGeek. Eddie Kalegi here with you. Tim Moore taking the show off, so I got Rahill Jaiswal in his place. Tim will be back, though, for our next episode. We're doing our second trivia episode. Stay tuned for that later this week. Should be a lot of fun. But there are some important matters to attend to on this episode. See Citi Field behind me. I'm going to have to talk about Edwin Diaz in a little bit. Craziness at the PGA Championship. The trailer officially released for EA Sports College Football 25. And just the stakes of that game make it something we have to talk about, including with what that means for NIL and such. But we got to start with the NBA postseason, Rahill, because we know now who the four teams will be that will be playing for an NBA title. Going into Sunday, I was feeling pretty good because I thought my four teams that I had predicted at the start of the playoffs that would make it would, because Boston was already in, Dallas was already in, thought the Knicks and Nuggets at home would be able to get the job done. But let's start with the Nuggets and Timberwolves, because this was a series that Minnesota took early control of games 1 and 2 at Ball Arena because they figured out a way, unlike most other teams, to contain Nikola Jokic because they're just so big and so long with Gobert, with Towns, with Naz Reid. You have three starting caliber centers in your main rotation, not to mention some other good defensive players like Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards. But they had put themselves in position. But then Denver rallied, won a few, set up a game 7. And I was thinking, oh, this is setting up, this Denver team's experience. They just won a championship. And they didn't. And they were in front by 15 points, a shocking choke job by the Nuggets. And the craziest part is that Anthony Edwards, frankly, didn't play that well offensively, but he made the right plays defensively. He shut down Denver's clutch player in Jamal Murray. And Karl Anthony Towns, I feel like with Anthony Edwards' emergence, everybody's forgetting about him, but he's an all-star talent, and he doesn't have to be a defensive center because they have Rudy Gobert, so he can focus on the offensive side of the basketball. And he was really the catalyst for Minnesota down the stretch, along with Naz Reid, to win that game 7. And this Timberwolves team, I think, is going to give Dallas some problems. And hey, if you can beat the defending champs, makes me think they can take on just about anybody.
Yeah, I would assume the Timberwolves are probably going to be favored in that series against the Mavericks. But the main thing it all came down to was containing Jokic. Now, they did it in a very smart way because they tried to put Rudy Gobert on him one-on-one, as you saw in game 5. That didn't work. Rudy Gobert is a great defender. Everyone was giving him flack, but he's just not good enough to guard Jokic single-handedly. When they started to switch with Karl Anthony Towns and Naz Reid. Naz Reid basically is a center. He plays like a center, even though he's a guard. He's like a mix of the two. He has those defensive capabilities as center to be a very good rim protector, but he can also, the way he plays on offense, he can be a guard. And he was great. I mean, there's a reason he won 6th Man of the Year. They just made everything so difficult for Jokic. Even the adjustments they made the first half of game 7, Jokic had 15 rebounds. I think he only had 2 in the second half. The main reason was Jokic was pretty much gassed toward the end of the game. Same thing with Jamal Murray. And I said this to you, Eddie, the main reason being Nuggets don't have the same depth they did last year. I mean, Bruce Brown was unbelievable. Their depth last year was unbelievable. I mean, Michael Porter Jr. was great the whole postseason run. He was great in the series against the Lakers. He was absolutely horrible against the Timberwolves. And Jokic couldn't shoot the 3 ball for some reason. Jokic's 3-point shooting was terrible this entirety of the postseason. And that was really how he was cooking the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. He'd hit an off-balance 3-point shot. He'd take you in the post. So overall, this was a really good defensive series. The Timberwolves did a really good job defensively. And you talk about Karl Anthony Towns. The thing that I loved what Karl Anthony Towns did, what's the knock about Karl Anthony Towns sometimes, Eddie, is yeah, you can shoot the three, but there are times you're just like, put your head down and take it to the basket. And that's exactly what he did in game 7. He had a couple 3-pointers, but when they really needed a bucket, he put his head down, went straight to the basket, and played like a big man. Because Towns is kind of like a mix, similar. He can knock down threes, but there are times where you're like, man, just drive the basketball. You'll get calls. You'll get easy 2-point baskets because you're too big. And that's exactly what he did. And overall, you got to give credit to the Timberwolves because it was the defense that, you hold the Nuggets to under 100 points. That's a real good accomplishment. And Anthony Edwards, yeah, he wasn't great offensively, but he played a lot better defense. He got a few fast break points, but he was also still aggressive. Even though he wasn't making his shots, he was still cutting to the basket, getting his playmakers open. So full credit to the Minnesota Timberwolves. This was this is huge for them. But as for the Nuggets, they'll go back. They'll draw some things up. They'll probably have to get a few more depth pieces because the bench toward the end of the games was absolutely unplayable. They shot at one point over the last couple games. They shot like the bench combined was like 1 of 22 or something ridiculous like that. They got no help from the bench. And that's kind of what really helped them out last year. It was the reason they were unstoppable because you couldn't just clue in on Jokic. And so it's tough being a defending champion for that reason. But hey, it's good for the NBA. You're going to get a new champion again. So, but yeah, full credit to the Timberwolves because they're going to be a tough matchup for Dallas just because of the way they play defense. They're physical, so they might give Luka Doncic some problems with the way they defend him. So it's going to be an interesting series to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And 6th champion in 6 years we're going to get in the NBA. It's going to be interesting with some of these young players. But 2 points I want to make, bridging off what you said. Number one, with the Nuggets, I think this once again signals what a testament some of these dynasties actually are to the NBA, because one of the big challenges, if you're a team that's going to dominate and win multiple championships, it's usually beyond just those 5 guys. You need to have a good bench. And for the Denver Nuggets last year, they had that depth. Yeah, they have an excellent starting lineup. You got the best player in the league in Nikola Jokic. You've got Jamal Murray, who's one of the best clutch performers in the league. Plus, you added Aaron Gordon, but you had other contributors on the bench. The biggest one that comes to mind for me, despite my frustrations with him for how he played in Game 7 against the Bucks a few years as a Nets fan, Bruce Brown was undeniably great for Denver last year, especially in the conference finals against the Lakers and then in the finals against Miami. And you lose him along with some other pieces, all of a sudden you don't have that same bench, because for teams that win, it's hard to sustain because you want to spend your money and allocate it at your best pieces. So the bench guys go by the wayside. Bruce Brown leaves for Indiana, and all of a sudden now Denver doesn't have as deep of a bench and it hurts them. So that's why give credit where credit is due. Regardless of the era, regardless of who these teams are playing against, if you can win several championships in a row and not lose key pieces, I don't care if you're talking about the modern Warriors, the 90s Bulls, or the 60s Celtics, credit where credit is due. It's hard to keep rosters together. That's point number one. Point number two, with this Minnesota team, they found the philosophy, and like you said with Karl Anthony Towns, playing big. That's the only way you could beat this Denver Nuggets team. And that's what Minnesota had to do, because the Nuggets have a generational talent in Nikola Jokic. You got Jamal Murray, who has been one of the best players in the playoffs ever since the bubble postseason, plus Aaron Gordon, plus KCP. The only way Minnesota was going to do this is if they were going to play bigger than Denver. And that doesn't mean, just being tall out there and being physical. It means actually trying to work the ball down low. And that's what they did, whether it was Towns or Reed or Gobert or Anthony Edwards. They found a way to drive to the cup, because Jokic, as great as he is, he's not an elite defender. There is ways to get past him because he's a step slow inside. And if you can do that, you find ways to win. So credit to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And if Denver couldn't crack that code, I don't really know if Dallas is going to be able to. And frankly, if they make it to the finals, I don't know how easy it's going to be for Boston. But let's talk about the Celtics' opponent, the Indiana Pacers. Now, the Knicks, it just ran out of players. It's as simple as that. Jalen Brunson breaks his hand in Game 7, but the Knicks were already basically out of it by that point. And it gets to the point that me and Tim were discussing on the show a couple of weeks ago. was it beneficial or detrimental that Tom Thibodeau played his guys so much in the regular season? Because you can make the argument it was good because it trained them for this situation where they would be playing 45 minutes a game in the playoffs. But you can also say they were doing this since December, January, when Mitchell Robinson and Julius Randle went down. They get tired out after a while. You get worn down, and what happens? You get hurt. Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, Jalen Brunson, Mitchell Robinson all go down in this series. There's no way you're going over the top, even with the Garden crowd. So I'm curious where you weigh in on that debate and how you evaluate the Knicks season now that they had a much more impressive year than last year, but end up going out in the same round.
Yeah, the watching game 7 was, I mean, you go through a lot of emotions when your team is losing. For me, it's mostly anger. There's a lot of walking around, not sitting on, just walking around yelling. That game was I was just pure sadness on the couch. I didn't say anything probably for a good hour after that game because my original pick for the Pacers series was Knicks in 7. So the series played out exactly how I thought it was going to. I thought the Knicks would win every game at home. I thought the Pacers would I thought they'd lose every game on the road. And that was exactly what happened up until game 7. As far as the whole minutes thing goes, listen, there's a lot of talk about Tom Thibodeau playing his guys. He had to. Okay, the Knicks didn't have a smither of really a bench because Bogdanovich, your main pieces were Bogdanovich and Alec Burks, who Thibodeau for some reason Burks fell into the doghouse, but Bogdanovich got hurt. So your main bench guy was not able to play. So Tibbs didn't have any choice but to play those guys 40 plus minutes. There is no possible way the Knicks make it to that game 7 of the conference semifinals if he doesn't play Josh Hart the minutes he played him. He's just too important to the team. I understand there's a whole point of resting your guys, but you got to keep them out there it's crazy because a lot of everyone in this modern day complains that NBA players are soft. They complain about load management. And now all of a sudden when they're playing 40 plus minutes, it's, oh, they're playing too much. Pick a side. You want him to play or you don't want him to play? Josh Hart played ridiculous amount of minutes last year. Quentin Grimes last year, he played 46 minutes in game 5 against Miami. He had the game-winning steal on one leg when he was in New York. This is a thing that Tom Thibodeau does. He just plays his best players a lot of minutes. He doesn't like to extend the rotation. And that was partially based on the way the roster was built with the unfortunate circumstance of Mitchell Robinson going down. Mitchell Robinson's injury didn't really have anything to do with minutes. We all know he's just very injury prone. So that was bound to happen. Once you lost him, then you realize, then the bench really got thin once Mitchell Robinson was out because you didn't have a backup center. Precious Achiuwa cannot play center. He played some decent minutes, but he can't play center. But all you can ask for as far as the recapping the season, all you can ask for as a fan is your team represents the city well. And I think that's exactly what they did. They gave that Garden crowd an unbelievable amount of crazy moments in this postseason. Jalen Brunson, postseason of a lifetime in New York. That's possibly the greatest postseason we've ever seen by a New York Knicks player. The numbers he was putting up were Jordan-esque, and it was absolutely ridiculous what he was doing. There was points where you just could not stop him. And unfortunately, it just happened to be he had a leg injury, played through it, then probably suffered a hand injury at some point, and then just going for that steal, his hand ended up breaking. But as you said, the Knicks were out of the game anyway at that point. That was kind of just the final, that kind of summed up the season with the injuries. But, people are going to make excuse. I understand the Knicks ran out of players, but I'm not going to say that, if this team was fully healthy, there would have been a chance they made it to, the NBA Finals or anything. Because let's be honest, if it was a fully healthy Knicks team and you're playing that card and the Bucks were fully healthy, New York does not beat Milwaukee in the second round if the Bucks are fully healthy with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard. I'm sorry, I just don't think that's the case. If you're playing the if healthy card, you got to give other teams the benefit of the doubt.
You got
so in that situation, who knows? Do they even beat a healthy Joel Embiid in Philly? I don't know. Granted, if Joel Embiid's not healthy, Philly's not even in that position. But you get what I'm saying. There's so many different. If you are claiming your team, giving them the what if healthy card, you got to give it to the other teams around. So back at what I said, preseason, this team was a second round exit. You win a first round series, Unfortunately, a golden chance to get to the conference finals because the Pacers felt more like a first round matchup than the Sixers did. The Sixers felt more like a second round matchup, but it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. But I mean, I love the team. I love the way they represented New York, and all you can ask for is that they played their hardest out, and that's what they did.
Yeah, they sure did for sure. I mean, even as a Nets fan, I appreciated the toughness that the Knicks brought out there and the effort that they gave all season long. Going to be some questions. I mean, I going into the offseason now, I mean, Isaiah Harkenstein is going to get himself a lot of money.
He's gonna make a lot of money.
Yeah, so he was really impressive, but you mentioned too, like even if they had won this, even if they were healthy, I mean, against Boston, it's so difficult because this Celtics team is so good this year beyond just Tatum and Brown. Because getting Drew Holiday, I think, is an absolute steal. And then you got Derek White, who emerges into nearly an all-star caliber talent this season. Plus, they still have depth at the center position, power forward. Plus, they have a solid bench. So, and a pretty good coach in Joe Mazzulla, too. Now, Indiana, this is a great run for them. They get past the Knicks, so no 1994 repeat for New York. I mean, the Rangers are still alive. They get past the Canes. They're playing the Panthers in the Eastern Conference Finals, but you got the Indiana Pacers now, and this team did prove that they could compete in sort of a postseason type format earlier this year when they made it to the championship in the in-season tournament. I know that's not reflective of too much and maybe not indicative of everything because the Lakers won it. They're already out, but you know, Tyrese Halliburton proved he can be clutch. And I think everybody forgets this Pacers team, by the way, gets no coverage from anybody. And it's really frustrating to see. And I mean, ESPN was ridiculous yesterday, too. I know the Knicks are the much bigger market here, but I mean, you got to have Stephen A. Smith on the pregame show giving a peck talk with Spike Lee. I mean, it's too much, but you know, the Pacers deserve more credit. And I think the biggest surprise everybody see, because it flew below the radar when the move happened, when you watch the Pacers the first time, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot they got Pascal Siakam. And Pascal Siakam is the same guy who dropped 37 on the Prime Warriors in the NBA Finals. And besides Kawhi Leonard, was the best player on that Raptors team when they won the championship. He was fantastic that series. He is probably the best scorer on this team. Plus, you have Miles Turner, who, after all those years of, oh, they're going to get rid of Miles Turner eventually, he's going to get traded. He's still happy in Indiana, and he's playing great basketball. You got Halliburton, and then you got these sneaky below the radar moves, kind of like the Knicks, that they've made to make that roster better. When they got Aaron Nesmith, for example, who's found a home there. Andrew Nembhard, who hit that huge three-pointer against the Knicks in, I believe, game 3 it was. And TJ McConnell, who's somehow still in the league, but is a really reliable backup point guard, a stingy defender, and Knicks fans probably going to hate to hear it, but Obi Toppin has found himself a home in Indiana as well. The real question for me, though, does this team stand any chance against the Celtics? I think this Knicks series really wore them out. I think Boston's going to power past them. But I think there's a world where the Pacers can at least make this interesting because the Celtics at times have shown to be a little bit vulnerable this year, including in that Cleveland series.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely do think the Pacers are more. I'm not going to say that the Pacers are going to. They're going to be a little disrespectful. Say it's going to be an easy sweep. You have to take the Pacers. I think the Pacers will probably. My pick would be Boston 5, but if you want to give you want to give Indiana 2 games. I mean, I'm not really going to fight you on that. But the main thing with the Pacers, it's all going to be about Tyrese Halliburton. How aggressive is he going to be? Because when Halliburton is aggressive, he plays at a completely different level than when he's not aggressive. And there are these points where, for some reason, it's like, why are you passing that off? And you talk about Pascal Siakam. I mean, that was the difference once OG Anunoby went out in this series because nobody could guard Siakam. He's a matchup nightmare for most people because you can't put a center on him because the center's too small, and you can't put a guard on him because the center is not quick enough, and you can't put the guard on him because the guard is too small. So Siakam can really pose a lot of issue now with Boston and the amount of different, pretty big guys they have. I think they're going to be okay, but it's all going to come down to Tyrese Halliburton. He has to be aggressive in this series, setting his guys up, but should be an interesting one, but I would probably lean that the Celtics would win this series in 5 games.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think Boston's going to take care of this in 5, but I think Indiana's going to keep at least a couple of these games close. But either Jason Tatum Tyrese Halliburton, Luka Doncic, or Anthony Edwards is going to be an NBA champion in about a month. So it's truly a new era of professional basketball. But let's transition to baseball for a second. I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here. I've been really impressed. The pitcher or player in general that I think has stood out the most to me, because he didn't get hyped up as much as some of these other Japanese signings we've gotten over the past few years, is Shota Imanaga and what he's doing with the Chicago Cubs. Because he's come over, he is dominating. He is a front runner for NL Cy Young through the first 6 weeks and change of the season, and he's doing it throwing 91 miles per hour. He does not have a powerful fastball. And the philosophy that everybody has these days, which I think is the main reason that pitcher injuries have spiked so much over these last few years, is that you have to throw as hard as possible. If you come up from the minors and you're throwing 97, that's not going to cut it. You got to get to triple digits. And what happens? Guys start throwing too hard. Their elbows get rattled. Tommy John surgery, you're out for 2 years. Shota Imanaga is proving that you can make things happen throwing 90-91 if you've got good off-speed stuff and good mixing and matching of location and movement. So this is why, with Edwin Diaz struggling the way he is and his fastball velocity is gone, I'd say to Met fans, I wouldn't count this guy out. It annoys me the way everything happened. I'm still frustrated, and I still don't like the World Baseball Classic, and it's annoying that that's where he got hurt, and he's not the same this year, and now he's not even going to be closing games. But even if his fastball velocity is ticked down, he's got great movement on other stuff. He's got to rely on those secondary pitches a little more. There are ways to succeed in this game, even if you're not throwing triple digits, as Shota Imanaga is proving right now. But it feels like nobody ever wants to talk about that, because all we care about are the flamethrowers, but the flamethrowers are the ones that constantly get hurt.
I mean, yeah, look at Jacob deGrom. I mean, he was touching, he threw 10 straight, 11 straight pitches over 100 miles an hour, but I mean, there's only so much your arm can take. And I mean, you look at some of the other really good pitchers that have had success. I mean, Kyle Hendricks for the Cubs when they won the World Series in 2016. I mean, he was their best pitcher. He had an ERA 2.13. He never hit triple digits on any of his pitches. He was more of a finesse guy. It was all about the curveball, and his fastball wasn't that good. And even if you look at with the Yankees, Nestor Cortez, he's had himself a pretty good career too. His fastball tops out at 96. You know, you don't have to gas at 100. Now, obviously, it'd be nice to gas at 100 if you can do that effortlessly, but you don't have to. And you talk about Edwin Diaz. Yeah, it's disappointing, but it's all about, you're talking about the fastball for Edwin Diaz. If its velocity is not there, it's fine. If it still has that little movement on it, I think he'll be okay. I think he'll figure it out. I mean, you look at some of the great closers in the game. I mean, Clay Holmes for the Yankees, he doesn't have a big arm. He's not about gassing at 100 miles an hour. So, I mean, I understand the point. I mean, a lot of great pitchers toward the late end of their career, I mean, the velocity drops. And just keep adding pitches to your arsenal, and that'll make you successful. I mean, it's really all that. So velocity is huge. It's not everything, like you said.
Yeah, it's not everything at all. And so many pitchers proved it. Even Yu Darvish is another example to me. I mean, he doesn't throw nearly as hard as he used to, yet he's still an effective pitcher, as he, is in his late 30s. Justin Verlander has...
Max Scherzer got better with age, too.
Yeah, Max Scherzer got better with age. Justin Verlander, while he hasn't had those results this year, I mean, 2 years ago still for the Astros, he's pushing 40 years old. He's topping out at 93, and he's still really effective. So, Clayton Kershaw, I mean, the list goes on and on. People need to stop with this whole philosophy, because it frustrates me when you see prospects come up. Like, the Mets call up Christian Scott, and he's looked good, but he's gotten hit around a little bit, and he tops out at like 96. And my fear is that all the coaches are going to tell him, how you get your ERA lower? You get your arm up to 100 miles an hour. And maybe that'll work out in the short term. But what happens? He blows out his elbow. You lose him for 2 years. And then you wonder, was it really worth it? So that's where it stands right now on that. I just wanted to touch on that for a second. I want to transition to the two other, I'd say, biggest non-Major Four sports stories of the week. We got to go to the golf course first, because just this ridiculous situation that transpired on Friday. So Xander Schauffele ends up winning the PGA Championship, second of 4 majors this year. But the story of the weekend revolves around the world's #1 golfer in Scottie Scheffler, who gets arrested on Friday morning and then returns and ends up playing, but was put in cuffs and has the mugshot, and they put him in orange suit and everything. Like, I mean, it just makes no sense. It still doesn't now. I still don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, I mean, and all we know from the report was that there was an accident. He tried to drive around, and the cop tried to stop him, and he didn't listen. And then when the reports first came out, it was for assaulting a police officer. The charge was assaulting a police officer. So I thought he got into an altercation with like he punched a police officer. So I was like, oh my god. And then you figure out the details. So I mean, somehow he managed to still play a good round. I mean, you go from being in jail, in cuffs early in the morning to teeing off. Even if you have a good day, I mean, you got to think that just drains you energy wise. And the next day, it's even tougher to recover. So, that maybe would he have won the whole thing if that didn't happen? Who knows? But yeah, certainly a crazy story and kind of weird situation for a PGA Championship that was so good. I mean, the ending was unbelievable. You had DeChambeau making the charge, getting back to even. Then you have Xander Schauffele shooting 21 under, which is the most in any major, and then nailing the birdie putt at the end on 18 to win the Wanamaker Trophy. I mean, it was a heck of a week. It was a heck of a sports weekend. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, certainly a weird situation. Hopefully, this is something. I mean, again, I don't think this is. It's not as if Scottie Scheffler's had previous issues with any of this stuff. He doesn't really have an arrest record or anything like that. So hopefully this is something that they can deal with. Hopefully the charges get dropped if they should be dropped. Hopefully they are dropped, and we can all you can move on to the U.S. Open and all the other tournaments that are upcoming.
It's just there's so many things that confuse me with it, and again, it's
Weird.
frustrating. It overshadows what was a great tournament. I mean, Victor Hovland was in the mix too. It was really a 3-horse battle. Schauffele's putt also toilet bowled into the hole too. It crazy to win it, but and obviously the other storylines with DeChambeau and everything with Live and PGA versus Live and how that comes together each of these majors, but just the charges, not really understanding why he got the charges he did is #1. #2, the other thing that then I thought about hours later, this is the #1 golfer in the world. He's made more than $1 million just in the last month in winnings from the Masters and other PGA tournaments. How does he not have a car service? Why does he have to drive himself to the course? You'd think for someone who's a millionaire star, why is he the one that has to personally drive himself? Yeah, so that confused me too. But obviously that really stole the show. But what should be credited is Xander Schauffele having a remarkable weekend and getting his first major, someone who's been in the mix many times before. And again, yet another golfer that gets a major before Ricky Fowler does, which just continues to be very, very funny to me. But let's finish with the big story for gamers out there and college football fans. The trailer released. What's been hyped for almost 2 years is officially becoming a reality in 2 months. EA Sports College Football 25 will release. It looks like it's going to be a highly, involved game. There's going to be every team's in it. You got multiple broadcast teams. The pictures and the videos and the trailer look great too. And it's so frustrating to me when I hear people complaining about, oh, the physics in the trailer look too much like Madden. It looks like a copycat of Madden. You're getting a college football game. You haven't had that in 11 years. After a while, how much more realistic can video games really get? I mean, after what do you expect it to look like? Madden looks like football. Madden, I know, has had some.
I was about to say, what would a non-Madden football game look like? I'm confused. I don't really know what the complaint about that is.
I know Madden is football, but I don't know how you change that. I know people have had some problems with certain things with Madden, but it's still the industry standard. And again, after a while, how much more can you really do with a video game to make it more realistic? Be happy the fact that college football is back in a video game for the first time in 11 years. It's a huge deal when you really think about it. And again, for people who might be watching this who don't play video games and are like, okay, why does this matter? It does for other reasons. The fact that college football now has a game where you have players with their likeness in it. This is the first time ever there's anything where college football players have their likeness in it and they're actually getting compensated for it. I mean, for years, there were college football and college basketball games where you just had these little animations of these players. They had the numbers, they looked like them, but they weren't actually them, and they didn't get a cent for it. Now every player is going to get that money. And you'd think, maybe it doesn't mean as much for, say, like Jalen Milroe or someone who's got all these endorsement deals and plays at Alabama. But, some random defensive end from Troy University who might not have any other NIL suddenly not only has the cool opportunity to see himself in a video game, but also get money for it is a big deal. So I think people need to realize just what the magnitude of this is. And regardless of whether the game plays like Madden or not, it is a long time coming. And really, I think is the culmination almost of these last 3 years since the NIL era was issued in by the Supreme Court in 2021, as now it's the first time we see a situation where every Division I FBS college football player has an opportunity to earn in the same realm.
Yeah, I mean, dude, look at Syracuse was in the trailer. Garrett Schrader, LaQuinn Allen, those guys are probably not making much money off NIL. And now they've got and also Garrett, these are guys that are most likely, I don't know about LaQuinn, but Garrett Schrader certainly not going to really have a long-standing career in the NFL, right? So they do want to stock up some money beforehand just because a lot of guys are not going to get major contracts. So this is a big deal for them. But, I mean, it also just helps for the fact that if you have a bunch of different colleges, I mean, it just helps the selling of it too. I mean, everyone who has either been to a school, goes to a college, they want to see their college represented. So the fact that everyone is getting representation is a really good sign. I mean, because you would think that, I certainly didn't think every FBS Division I school was going to be in the game. So, I mean, it's really awesome. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, I'm not a huge gamer myself, and I'm extremely excited to see how this turns out. It's certainly going to be something that's really cool. And like you said, long overdue, because this has been in the works for a while now.
Yeah, it's been almost 2 years that they've been talking about this. And I mean, the rumors of the game coming back even precede NIL coming into the fold in 2021. So great to see actually something tangible come out, and it's only 2 months away from releasing. But that's going to do it here for episode 173 of Sports Speak Live, powered by SeatGeek. Remember, on Thursday, we have episode 2 of the Ball Knowers Showdown Trivia Show. We'll see if Alec and Tropper can defend their title. We'll have some new challengers, and Tim will be hosting. So I'm kind of scared to see what kind of questions he comes up with, because I'm actually going to be playing this time. So we'll see how that goes. Stay tuned for that to kick off your Memorial Day weekend on Thursday night. But for Rahill Jaiswal, I'm Kalegi, signing off of this episode of Sports Speak Live. Enjoy your week. We'll see you for trivia on Thursday night.